rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to American Perspective. Sorry, I got distracted. I was looking at my mixer board and I realized that it was just a little off kilter. My OCD kicked in and I was like, that doesn't look like it's straight. And I went ahead and had to straighten it off, which of course was right when the camera came on. So more about me than than you really ever want to know. All right. Enough about that. Oh, all I got to say is that for some reason, I won't necessarily say I have like a love affair with the law, but I certainly enjoy the law. Because with the law, it's pretty straightforward. When you understand how things work, when you understand how things are put together, law really isn't necessarily all that complicated. I mean, some of the laws that are written, yes, those are complicated. But, the law itself is not that complicated. Because, it's basically like a rule set. Now, I am one of these types of people who is, for the most part, reason, logic, understanding, ethics, moral standards, those kinds of things are all, shall we say, they are relatively easy to understand because of the fact that, it's kind of a black and white. There really isn't a lot of gray necessarily. Sometimes there is, and you learn how to deal with it. But it's sort of like, at least in my world, it's like ones and zeros in the binary code. It's either on or it's off. It's either positive or it's negative. There is not a lot that can be interpreted, let's say, in a lot of things. Now, that being said, the laws as written, there are a lot of, there can be a lot of interpretation, but the law itself is really not that complicated to figure that out because, laws say what they say and mean what they mean, and they don't say what they don't say. That's Antonin Scalia with regards to the Constitution. The Constitution says what it says and doesn't say what it doesn't say. Which is part of the reason why I sit here and I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool. I mean, the law, generally speaking, is pretty cool. You have rules, procedures, you have standards, best practices, all of those things within the law. And then you run across Jack Smith. He went and testified yesterday in front of the, I think it was the Judiciary Committee. And we played a couple of clips last night, and I've got a little bit more about it tonight because I think that a lot of people, especially the left is like, oh, yeah, Jack Smith, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread because he decided to take on Trump. And, no, he's not. And I'll explain why here in just a few minutes. Also, too, there was a Don Lemon, thinks he's skated out of legal trouble, sort of. And I got a little bit about that as well. Plus, we have some other things with regards to judges and that kind of stuff. We're going to break down a lot of the legalese and that tonight. So that is tonight's topic. But first, we must pay homage to the wonderful country that we call home. And therefore, we will have U.S. Abby Girl. Yes, she's sitting over there in the green room getting herself ready. She's like, la, 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 you know, getting all ready to sit there and get herself prepared to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you are of mine, please stand. Remove your hat if you're wearing one, like me. Place your hand over your heart and follow along with U.S. Abby Girl as she recites the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And she did it with that Southern flair. You know what, U.S. Abby Girl? I'm going to ask you. You can choose to not do this if you want, but I'm going to ask you. Can you do me a favor, and can you send me an audio clip, just like you did with the Pledge of Allegiance? But send me an audio clip of you saying, "Oh, bless her heart," or "bless his heart." Actually, that would be great if I could get both. I have an idea. And I'm I want you to be the voice for that idea. So anyway, all right, folks, let's go ahead and continue on. Thank you for that. By the way, if you would like to get here, oh, I threw myself off. See, already we're crashing. Anyway, if you haven't done so already, and if you would like to put your pledge into the Pledge of Allegiance pool, please, all you need to do is record yourself reciting the pledge. Bonnie, I think you know which one I'm looking for. Reciting the pledge in your style. Take that audio file, video file, whatever kind of file, and attach it to an email and send it off to me by attaching it to an email and sending it to the address fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online, and I will get you into the rotation. Also, too, don't forget, if you decide to do it on your phone, you can use the share option. That's S-H-A-R-E, the share option on your phone, and it'll do the exact same thing. You can send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. All right, folks. That's right. This year, 2026, is America's 250th anniversary. It is a celebration that we all should be proud of. Of course, the leftists are so stupid, but you should all be proud of. And you can show that pride off by going to theflagshirt.com and picking up one of their America's 250th anniversary t-shirts, hats, whatever. They have a full section of America 250 gear that is there for this wonderful milestone on the country. And while you're there, go and check out their other stuff, like the Stars and Stripes pattern shirt that I'm wearing. The Stars and Stripes pattern shirt that I'm wearing, because that's another one. They have a plethora. They have a plethora of wonderful items that you can go and take a look. Men's, women's, kids, made in the USA, all kinds of accessories decked out in the red, white, and blue. You should check it out. Go and check it all out at theflagshirt.com. And if you order $75 or more of their product, they will provide you with free shipping. But I know that not everybody can spend $75 or more. Maybe you only want one t-shirt. Like, you're only interested in one America's 250th anniversary shirts. I understand that. It's not a problem. I get it, because I can help you out. All you need to do is head off to flagshirt.americanperspective.online. That's flagshirt.americanperspective.online. And while you are there, you will be presented with a coupon code. Take that coupon code, copy and paste it into the promo code box at checkout at theflagshirt.com, and you'll get $5 off your order. Head to flagshirt.americanperspective.online. Be presented with a coupon code, copy and paste that into the promo code box at checkout at theflagshirt.com, and you'll get $5 off your order on American Perspective. Go to theflagshirt.com and get yourself patriotized and be like me in the wonderful red, white, and blue. All right. So yesterday we were talking and I showed you a few clips that came from the Jack Smith grilling on Capitol Hill. Oh, and by the way, I never said anything about this, but I thank you all for, I thank you all very much for the congratulations on hitting 800 episodes, folks. We are in episode 801 right now. And if everything goes well and nothing really changes, okay, everything goes well and nothing really changes, we will hit the 1000th episode of American Perspective in September. So the first part of September, we will hit 1000 episodes in the first part of September. So I am going to have to talk with Mrs. Whiskey. We're going to have to get something put together, something special for the 1000th episode. And we've got some time to plan on it, but if everything goes right and I still transmit every single day between now, well, not every single day because Sundays I have off, but if I transmit the way that I do right now, and no holidays, no special occasions, none of that stuff, and I get all the way into September, we should be at the 1000th episode, which we'll try and make that an epic episode. All right. Thank you all for the well wishes on that one. I appreciate that. All right. Let's move on here. Yes, 9 key moments from the Jack Smith's congressional testimony that came up yesterday. And I think, the liberal left really has a lot of problems with this because they look at Jack Smith and they think, oh, Jack Smith, he is just the greatest thing since sliced bread. And he hangs out and he's like, and then tries to answer really, really slowly. Or he takes time to unmute his mic. And he's just acting like, yeah, I'm just like a space cadet, sort of, or thinking up his answers before he answers. Now, most of the time, I agree. Taking a moment or two to think about your answer before you actually say something, totally agree. That is a good practice to do because you don't want to go and do like that idiot leftist lunatic moron on CNN that just like blurted out that Donald Trump was part of the sex trafficking ring or whatever. But all of that being said, that pattern only lasts for so long. And this guy, I got to tell you, in terms of his testimony, he really kind of sort of stuck himself into it. And I'll explain why. And it's not just me that's saying this. There's a couple of other people that are saying it too. Some leftist lawyers who are not conservative by any means. And they're saying it as well. But here's some key moments. So the first one, obviously, in case you missed the whole thing, the Smith appointment. So one of the things that happened, of course, was in Florida, Eileen Cannon, the judge, came and called into question whether or not Smith was appointed properly. Well, let's say there's a little detail that came out that nobody seems to understand, that Smith may not actually have been appointed correctly. I mean, let's throw out the idea. I'm just going to toss it for the moment. Setting it aside, actually, not necessarily tossing it, but setting it aside, let's just set aside the idea that the position of special counsel was eliminated when Congress eliminated that particular law long prior to Smith being appointed. Now, all of that being said, Lance Gooden, Republican from Texas, he attempted to get an answer with regards to whether or not Smith's appointment was actually constitutional and legal. And the congressman noted how Smith was seemingly sworn in twice. Now, did you guys know that? I know I didn't. This was a bit of a revelation for me. Apparently, Smith was sworn in once in November of 2022 and again was sworn in September of 2023. Now, he asked Smith about the first swearing in, and Smith kind of said he couldn't recall key details of that event. He said, quote, I don't recall the specifics of it. I know I was sworn in, but I don't recall the specifics of how it was done. Really? You would think that that would be an important part of his history, that he would be interested or remember what that was all about. Well, anyway, Gooden, the the congressman, Gooden says, you signed it on November of 2022, but there's no witness, which I mean, you have to agree is a little odd. If there's no witness saying that you took the oath of office, and it would maybe make someone like me question whether or not you were legitimately doing the job until you finally took the oath of office, because it sounds like the Attorney General Merrick Garland had the same question and thought, oh crap, we got to have him sign this on the 14th day of September of the following year. Now, somebody wise, one of my wise Whiskey Warrior P1s, let me just ask you this. I'm going to kind of erase, we want to race against time here. But if Smith was not sworn in properly in November of 2022 and had to be re-sworn in properly in September of 2023, and yet Smith brought 3 criminal indictments against Trump before being sworn in on September 2023, what do you think would or should legally happen to anything that might have come before September of 2023? What do you think? What do you think would happen in terms of all that? And I'm kind of waiting, just so you understand, I'm kind of waiting a little bit here to see if my Whiskey Warrior P1s pick up on it. I just want to see if they're picking up what I'm putting down. There we go. 3 Chevy hits it right in the keister. Everything that would happen in that interim means that it's invalid. So, have you ever heard of the legal phrase, fruit of the poison tree? So basically what that means is that if if a search warrant is illegally executed, or you obtain information that you wouldn't be able to normally get through legal channels, you obtain it illegally, that means that anything that follows that particular event is now considered the fruit of the poison tree. So, assuming that Smith was illegally sworn in November of 2022, because they had to re-swear him in September of 2023, that means that everything that happened before September of 2023 means that he was not special counsel at that time. He was private individual Smith, not special counsel Smith. So that little tidbit kind of, and the fact that Smith can't even remember the details of it, and there was no witness, okay, so all of his work that happened between November 2022 and September 2023 should be immediately tossed out. Okay. Another piece that came out of this little questioning had to deal with the confidential human sources that were being utilized. Chairman Jim Jordan directed his questioning toward Smith and the use of $35 million in taxpayer dollars to target Trump in their lawfare. Now, apparently, the special counsel paid a confidential human source $20,000 for some information. And so, Jim Jordan asked Smith, how much of that $35 million of taxpayer money did you give to confidential human sources? And there was a long moment of silence from Smith. So Jordan referenced the $20,000 payment and once again asked, how much money did you pay confidential people that we do not know about, with American tax money going after the guy we elected president? Now, Smith confirmed that he approved the $20,000 payment from the FBI to the confidential human source, but said that he did not know the identity of the individual. He further claimed uncertainty about whether any additional payments were made to that same confidential human source, or if there were other payments that were given to other sources. So apparently the congressman then asked Smith later why his office didn't just simply contract with the confidential human source who was supposedly used to review video evidence, as opposed to making hidden payments to a confidential human source. That's kind of, shall we say, hinky. All right. So, now there is also the case of alternate electors. Now, one thing that the left keeps talking about is, all of these alternate electors, everything that, Trump did, alternate electors, they're all illegal. No, they're not. They're not illegal. And even Mark Levin, who is a lawyer, Mark Levin keeps talking about how, no, alternate electors are not unconstitutional. They're not illegal. They're often done. It's an alternate slate of electors. That's it. Now, the Federalist, where I'm getting this information, the Federalist has a person named Margot Cleveland, and she pointed out that the characterization of having alternate electors is a fake electors scheme. That's simply not accurate, because the naming of Trump electors in contested states during 2020 actually mirrors what happened in Hawaii during the 1960 election in Kennedy versus Nixon. Now, Representative Tom Tiffany, a Republican from Wisconsin, raised that point during the hearing. The congressman asked Smith if the alternate elector situation of 2020 has happened before. Well, Smith admitted that it did happen in 1960, although he's claiming that it's not anything similar to the 2020 case. Well, it also happened in 1876 as well. So, again, Jack Smith is trying to make hay out of nothing. Okay? This is allowed. This is allowed legally. All right? Now, let's move on to the next lie that's been perpetrated by the left over this whole thing. So, not once during the conversation between Trump and Raffensperger did Trump actually say to Raffensperger, find 11,780 votes. Rather, Trump spoke of his own desire to find 11,780 votes, and did so in the context of highlighting the fact that there were tens of thousands of illegal votes for which his legal team had ample evidence of, and they asked merely that the Secretary of State review their evidence of illegal voting that happened in Georgia. Now, keep in mind, the Georgia Election Commission has just found something like 350,000 votes that were potentially illegally cast because they weren't signed for properly. Now, you kind of would think that that potentially could have come out during an investigation, right? No. So, I don't know. It's kind of like, I'm not sure about this. Anyway, Representative Lucy McBath, who is a Democrat from Georgia, attempted to frame the call as an attempt by Trump to prey on Republican officials like Raffensperger and use them as political allies in what she characterized a criminal scheme designed to overturn the 2020 election. But no, that's not the case because, again, the Georgia Elections Commission has since found that there was a massive amount of votes that were illegally cast because they hadn't been signed or checked off or verified at all, whatever their process is down there. All right. Now, you remember the video that I showed of Gill going after Representative Brandon Gill of Texas going after Jack Smith. Well, don't forget during that grilling that Smith and company sought to keep knowledge of the subpoenas for the members of Congress to keep them hidden, and of course how much that particular avenue violated their constitutional rights. We all know about that. So Chip Roy had the opportunity, and he may not have been the first Republican necessarily to talk about the special counsel's office subpoenaing the phone records. However, the news that he revealed when doing so was nothing short of explosive. So the Texas congressman revealed during the questioning or during the hearing that he had found out a few weeks prior that Smith's team had subpoenaed his phone records as part of the Arctic Frost inquiry. You remember Arctic Frost was what they were calling this investigation. And Roy said, quote, "We called AT&T and we've learned that they were given to the Department of Justice, as this email indicates, because I had been in communication with Scott Perry, one of my colleagues here in Congress, who literally had his phone taken from him in front of his family." Yeah. Anyway, here, let's take a quick listen to that exchange.
Chairman, Mr. Smith, how many members of Congress or the Senate did you subpoena phone toll records?
As I sit here right now, I do not recall a specific number.
Is this the complete list right here? Let me ask you this. Am I on this list? Did you target my records and subpoena my phone toll records?
My understanding is your records were subpoenaed by prosecutors before I became special counsel.
Well, staff would put this up on the screen. I'm thankful for the great staff who discovered the email where I learned for the first time a few weeks ago that my phone records were indeed targeted. We called AT&T and we've learned that they were given to the Department of Justice, as this email indicates, because I had been in communication with Scott Perry, one of my colleagues here in Congress, who literally had his phone taken from him in front of his family. Of course, as we've already talked about in this document, it talks about you could be in violation of the privilege by even obtaining and possessing this information if the member objected to the disclosure. This happened 4 years ago in May of 2022, and I couldn't object because I didn't know. I didn't know until about 3 weeks ago. My question here is, was there any limits to your investigation or the investigation that preceded you, Mr. Smith? Because as egregious as a violation of separation of powers this is, as an egregious and abusive power it is, it's far more concerning you are clearly targeting American citizens for merely being conservative or supporting the president. We've got memos that we've already been talking about in this hearing from April 2022 that preceded you that establish and open the investigations, one of which has Attorney General Merrick Garland's signature on it. And the focus was the electors. Now, that was 6 months before you were appointed. You testified earlier, you met and interviewed Merrick Garland and Deputy AG Lisa Monaco. And you briefed the AG and deputy multiple times. Did you brief them on the electors and the prosecution of their supposed crimes?
I'm sorry.
Did you brief them on the electors and their supposed crimes?
I don't recall specific conversations.
All right. So obviously you can see Jack Smith is doing a lot of things that were underhanded, at the very least. Underhanded with all of this. All right. Now, let's keep in mind that the Democrats have never made any kind of secret that they want President Trump behind bars. So it's no surprise that Representative Hank Johnson of Georgia, you know, the guy that he thought that Guam was going to capsize if too many people were on it. Yeah, that idiot. Anyway, he apparently telegraphed that Democrats plan to resurrect their lawfare against President Trump once he leaves office. See, Johnson asked Smith, those indictments against Trump have been dismissed. Can they be rebrought or resurrected after Trump leaves office? Now, Smith, of course, says, well, they were dismissed without prejudice. For those of you that don't know, when something is dismissed without prejudice, it actually means when something's dismissed without prejudice that, yes, you can bring it again, provided that, of course, it's within the statute of limitations. But, yeah, so they are totally planning on bringing this back. Okay? Now, Smith, of course, did decline to speak to that and instead said that he can only speak to what his office did, which was dismiss the case without prejudice. So whether or not it's coming back or not, yeah, they're going to find a way. They're going to find a way to get this done. I'm just telling you. Now, we all know that Jordan focused at one point on the discredited testimony of Cassidy Hutchinson. And Cassidy Hutchinson, of course, made up all of her crap, or was actually even worse than just making up all that crap. She was like third-party hearsay. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I've watched a lot of lawyerly television shows, and I can tell you just about every single time that hearsay is brought into play, you can only testify to things to which you are specifically a party of. You are not allowed on the stand to say, well, you know, Jay over here said that Tom said that Larry said that he was going to do something. You cannot in any way, shape, or form have that as positive testimony. It's impossible. Okay. Now, that being said, we all know that Jack Smith was still considering Cassidy Hutchinson as a potential witness, even though her story was completely debunked. There were two much more credible witnesses than her who had totally debunked her story, and that, again, it was like level 3 in terms of hearsay. So it was like a friend of a friend of a friend had told me X, Y, Z, whatever that is. So anyway, all of this put into play, though, brings in the legal analysts. Yes, there's a couple of legal analysts. One in particular is CNN's legal analyst. Well, he kind of zeroed in on some very interesting, after he had a minute or two to analyze all of this, he kind of zeroed in on a couple of things. So let's take a listen to Eli Honig of CNN, and as he talks about where he thinks there's a bit of a problem. Take a listen.
Your question, Brianna. The last congressman we saw brought up the fact that Jack Smith demanded a trial date 4 months out, 5 months out, in a case involving 13 million pages of documents. There is no defense lawyer in the country who can constitutionally prepare for trial and defend his client on that short a time frame. The implication was you were rushing to get this in before the 2024 election. Jack Smith did not defend himself, by the way. He didn't say a word about that, which I found strange. Yeah, it's true, right?
It's true.
Exactly.
I mean,
and he didn't defend himself
case before the election.
Exactly.
Right.
And Jack Smith has always maintained this veneer that he never thought about the election. Of course he did. Why would you demand such a quick trial date?
And there's the point. There's the point. Why would he demand such a quick trial date when you have so many documents to go through and so much preparation to go through? Well, that's the whole point. He was doing it because of the fact that they want to get Trump. They don't care. They were just trying to put a chink in the armor of Trump and try to get him taken care of. Now, here's the other part that all of this is a part of. Unfortunately, this isn't a part of a video or part of a audio clip or video clip. I got to read it to you. But Honig continued and says, Smith has essentially abandoned any pretense. He'll bend any rules, switch up any practice as long as he gets to chip away at Trump's electoral prospects. At this point, there's simply no defending Smith's conduct on any sort of principled or institutional basis. He says, the quote, but we need to know this stuff before we vote is nice on a bumper sticker, but it's neither a response to nor an excuse for Smith's unprincipled, norm-breaking practice. Now, keep in mind, Jack Smith has made a career of failing to bring novel legal theory to practice. So, yeah. Anyway, he also pointed out that that some other problems that have come up, one of them is dealing with the motions. Now, if you recall, during the trial, Jack Smith filed motions prior to the defense making motions. And that is completely unorthodox. See, the way that this is supposed to work, legally speaking, is the prosecutor files the indictment, the defense makes motions, whatever it is, whether it's dismissing charges, suppressing evidence, whatever motions are being put up. And then the prosecution has to respond to those motions. Now, all of that makes sense because the prosecutor doesn't necessarily know what the defense is going to bring as a motion. And so how are they going to, you can sort of anticipate, but all of that realistically has worked flawlessly throughout hundreds of thousands of cases and hundreds of years within our courts. However, what happened in this particular case is that Smith turned well-established, thoroughly uncontroversial rules of criminal procedure on their head and asked Judge Chutkan for permission to file first, even an actual defense motion pending. Now, of course, Trump's team objected during this time, and the judge did acknowledge that Smith's request to file first was, procedurally irregular, but she went ahead and ruled in Smith's favor, which she's done at every single consequential turn. She was in his pocket. Now, I'm not saying that for sure, but it sure as hell damn well looks like it, because every single thing that he did that was novel and unorthodox, She ruled in his favor. Now, the thing about it is when you go to a trial, when you get on trial, when you go to a trial, anything that the prosecution does, says in the media, files in their motions, anything that they do, including things like coaching witnesses and coaching, jurors and stuff. All of that can be done. Plus their press releases in the media. All of that can be considered prejudicial against the defendant. So Smith, by filing ahead of time, before the defense filed, is prejudicial to Trump, both legally as well as politically. So Smith, of course, complained throughout that particular case that Trump's words might taint the jury pool, which is why they put a gag order on him. And he requested that gag order, which, Judge Chutkan did actually do Trump a favor and slimmed it down considerably, because he was looking for a complete gag order. Like, Trump can't say a damn word. Judge Chutkan kind of slimmed that down. And then, of course, the Court of Appeals slimmed it down even further than that. But now Smith is using grand jury testimony, which ordinarily remains secret prior to the trial, drafts up a tidy 165-page document that contains all kinds of all kinds of manner of damaging statements about the defendant, made it outside of the trial setting without being subject to the rules of evidence or cross-examination, files it publicly, generating national headlines. And who sees those allegations? All of us, the public. And keep in mind, all of this is happening right prior to the election. Not only that, but it's also prior to the trial and the choosing of jurors. Now, if that isn't witness and jury tampering, I have absolutely zero idea what else would be. Okay? Now, all of this, of course, violates the core DOJ principle and policy, because one of the edicts that the DOJ has is you never bring a case that could potentially impact an election. And of course, Smith's filing, did it qualify for that? Abso-freaking-lutely. So what did he do? Well, he pushed his trial. He pushed it forward. He filed motions outside of the typical practice. He filed this big document in order to slant the jury pool toward his case without even, again, innocent until proven guilty is still a concept in this country. And all of this stuff is all tied together. You don't think this guy, this was totally a political prosecution. But it's not just Eli Honig, or Ellie Honig, I should say, who is saying this. We also have the law professor, Jonathan Turley, is following up with this. Let's go ahead and go over to him, and let's take a listen to what he has to say.
At one point, Jack Smith there was saying that politics never played a role in his investigations. That's exactly why we're here today. And then he announced, of course, off the top, that he was the chief of public integrity. There might be some people who would argue with that. Jonathan?
Well, it's obviously this hearing is getting more and more lively as we expected. The problem with Smith is that his own record is the case against him. For example, when the hearing began, someone asked him to respond to my criticism that he was stretching the law beyond the breaking point in case after case. And he just sort of shrugged and said that, he always respected the law. The record is the record. He was able to secure a unanimous decision against one of his most famous cases. The undoing of Jack Smith has always been his appetite. He has a serious problem with limitations, and they undermine his case.
There you have it. There you have it. See, Jack Smith is not what you would call a conventional lawyer. Jack Smith is someone who loves to push the boundaries. And for those of you that don't know, he has gone to the Supreme Court and got his butt smacked hard by 9-0 decision. And that includes even the leftist morons that are activists and not actually jurists. So, yeah. This was 100% political. Had nothing to do with whether or not Donald Trump did anything. Just 100% political. This Jack Smith guy, man, what a piece of work. That's all I got to say. What a piece of work. All right. Well, let's move on here. You know, Don Lemon crashed a church with a bunch of other people protesting. And essentially, the other people protesting, they got arrested. Don Lemon got let go. Sort of. So Don Lemon, the DOJ brought a case to a magistrate. The magistrate at the time said, no, I don't think that you guys should really do this. You're not. We're gonna reject this to charge Don Lemon with regards to this. Now, the interesting thing about it is the fact that there was no real reason as to why that was done. They don't know, at least as far as to the best of my knowledge, what he, whether or not he was saying, no, we're not going to do it because of the probable cause hadn't been met, or, I'm not really convinced of the charge by itself. They don't really know why he would do it. And normally what you would see typically in these kind of cases is you would see a rejected criminal complaint, but and normally you wouldn't see it because it's not normally posted on the court's docket, and Lemon is not otherwise charged, so the DOJ's policy is not necessarily to comment about it. So the question's going to be now whether or not he is going to get charged in another way. So there is this Rule 7 in the Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure that actually allow the DOJ to bypass the indictment process. So if the and by the way, this is called a let me see what it's called. I can't remember the exact phrasing here. The Bill of Information. So if the charges that they bring are not a felony, okay, and provided that it's not, the punishment for this is punishable by death or imprisonment for more than 1 year. So you can bring a charge by the Bill of Information process, provided that it's a not a felony, and can be under a misdemeanor that is not punishable by imprisonment for more than 1 year. So they can still file charges against him for this. And by the way, that Bill of Information doesn't have to go in front of a magistrate to get accepted. They can file it and then just show up in court or get a court date. Well, the DOJ has vowed to pursue Don Lemon. And what's even more funny, or more interesting, I should say, is that Don Lemon, he's bringing this on himself. Yes. You know, if he'd have just kept his damn mouth shut, took the win, and not being a problem, I think there wouldn't be that big of an issue. But in actuality...
Look, I stand proud and I stand tall. This is not a victory lap for me because it's not over. They're going to try again, and they're going to try again. And guess what? Here I am. Keep trying. That's not going to stop me from being a journalist. You're not going to diminish my voice. Go ahead, make me into the new Jimmy Kimmel if you want. Because I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to believe the same things, whether you want to, whatever. None of this is about justice. This is about power, and it's about people who are incompetent.
No, Don, it's actually about the law. It's actually about the law. Now, here's the thing. Harmeet Dillon, after Don Lemon put that out and said, hey, I dare you to come and get me. Harmeet Dillon goes on X, okay. So she is definitely going after him. Because here's the thing. If he is actually charged via the FACE Act, okay, he can get a low end or a misdemeanor, less than 1 year punishment out of it. So, yeah. And here's the biggest thing that is questionable, whether or not Don Lemon is able to use this journalist get out of jail free card. First of all, being a journalist doesn't mean you automatically have a get out of jail free card. That's number one. Number two is that when asked and requested by the pastor to leave the church, Don Lemon refused. And at that point, he's no longer a journalist. He actually become a activist and a participant in the protest. Now, his actions and words, of course, also indicate that he was not just there simply to document things, that he was there to push an anti-ICE message, support the activists, while claiming that he was doing journalism. Now, the reason why this piece in Red State kind of breaks it down, the reason why that people think that he's doing this is because of the fact that he knows that he can get charged. He knows that he did something wrong, and he knows that in the court of public opinion, that's going to probably count more than the court itself. So as long as he can make this a big deal, especially in the public eye, he has a better chance that the DOJ doesn't go after him. Okay. So, yeah. Anyway, Don Lemon, let's be honest, is really doing this to get attention. I mean, that's just basically where this boils down to. But apparently he does actually have lawyers now. He's got lawyers, and they're doing whatever the suggestions and, et cetera, with regards to all of this. So, yeah. All right. Well, speaking of judges, the House Speaker Johnson has now come out and said, yeah, you know what? Maybe we should start impeachment against some of these judges that have had some problems by, trying to block Trump's agenda. So Johnson said during a January 21st news conference alongside other Republican House members, said, I'm for impeaching these people people. And he goes, Judge Boasberg is one who's been mentioned. Now, he also said that impeachment, as we've discussed altogether many, many times, is an extreme measure. But he follows that up by saying extreme times call for extreme measures. And he continues and says, I think some of these judges have gotten so far outside of the bounds of what they're supposed to operate, it would not be, in my view, a bad thing for Congress to lay down the law, so to speak, and to make an example of some of these egregious abuses. Now, he didn't name anybody else. I wonder. Let's see. Another legal challenging scenario. You know that Minnesota fraudster, Amy Bach? Well, now she has come out and clearly stated and alleged that Walz and A.G. Ellison out in Minnesota are actually aware of the widespread fraud that was going on. Yes, she has now charged them directly. She was the former head of the nonprofit Feeding Our Future. In speaking to Fox News from Sherburne County Jail in Minnesota, she claimed that state officials continued approving and paying claims even after concerns were raised about the possibility of potential fraud. She alleged that state-approved program sponsors was responsible for monitoring the claims, but the officials repeatedly failed to investigate or stop suspicious companies after she flagged them. She said, and I quote, I honestly believe Keith Ellison and Governor Walz need to be held accountable. There needs to be an investigation done. If they weren't aware, that's concerning. She continued and said, I have to believe the governor's office and Keith Ellison's office were aware of this. They said they were involved in helping the FBI. They said they were made aware, but apparently I'm scary, so they couldn't do anything. Yeah. Oh, boy. Speaking of Minnesota and New York in particular also, because New York is following Minnesota with regards to ICE. Just really quickly in the final moments, apparently hospital staff over in New York, they mistook some New York Police Department detectives as ICE agents, and the hospital asked those detectives to actually leave. So the plainclothes officers arrived Friday at the New York University Langone Health in Cobble Hill on Friday after a drug suspect spat on them during a narcotics investigation in Brooklyn North. And this is coming out of the New York Post, citing the New York Police Department. The agency said that staff told the detectives they could not go into the ER with their service firearms, prompting one officer to hold on to the weapon while his companion received care. Staff reportedly approached the second officer and demanded that he leave because of the weapon, sparking a dispute the officer receiving care intervened in. The NYPD then said, quote, and then at that point, the two detectives heard members of the hospital staff say something to the effect of believing that they were ICE and that they should receive care elsewhere. A source familiar also told the Post that the staff were being rude to the officers, alleging they were ICE officers and claimed they should get medical care elsewhere. The officers had properly identified themselves as NYPD, another source told the Post. So, the New York NYU Health has said that they expressed their regret over the handling of the matter to NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch, and said that no one was denied medical treatment in a statement that they made to the Daily Caller. He said, we provided the care to the injured officer who was asked to temporarily secure his weapon as per policy. The other 2 officers were allowed to keep their weapon. NYU Langong has always values the opportunity to provide care for members of law enforcement, except maybe ICE. These guys are idiots. All right, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are signed up and signed in, make sure that you search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or in the case of 3 Chevy, a thumbs sideways across all my platforms, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, or, of course, the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night, 1 hour later, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.